This is from Art Bell. The subject is about a creature. I saw a creature that was obviously not human, but did possess obvious technology. Technology that was not introduced to us until many years later. It was a humanoid-type lizard person. I was within 4 feet of it. I lived in the Midwest, and in the Midwest in the 1970s, we had no air conditioning, so people left their windows open in the summertime. People had storm windows to keep the bugs out. Mine was busted out from a basketball, so it was basically just an open window. I was sitting in bed. I've always been a light sleeper, and I found myself sitting up, and I was watching the back of a creature that was obviously a lizard-type creature. I was fascinated. I don't think being a kid you get scared at obvious things. This thing turned around and looked at me. I looked right at its eyes, and I didn't see eyes. What I seen were, it looked like, glass bulbs that had a red tinge around the very edge of it, such as what you would see with night vision. That's hypothetical because I don't have that in my possession. I've never had that in my possession. I was 11 years old and I was not asleep. I was sitting up in my bed observing this as it was going through the items that I had on my dresser. This thing turned around and looked at me. It probably looked at me for what seemed like a long time, but in reality was probably only 2 or 3 seconds. Now this is where people laugh at me and think it's hokey pokey. This thing took its hand, which did have fingers. I don't recall how many fingers it had, and they weren't dexterous fingers like human fingers, but it was actually like animal-type fingers. It touched a yellow belt that it was wearing, and I watched this thing disappear. I don't know how much time had passed, but then I regained consciousness. My closet door was open, and this same creature was rummaging around in my closet. I was still not panicked because it was moving slow. This thing did turn, and observed me. It was observing my condition of me observing it. Once it observed that I had seen it again, this thing moved so fast that it was like it was a strobe light, and it leaped right out the open window, and that's why I panicked as a kid. I panicked when it moved fast. When it didn't move fast, I was able to observe it with fascination. I then screamed, ran to my parents' room. My parents came, turned on the light, and looked around. My closet door was obviously open. Things had been strewed out of it. I slept in my parents' room. They didn't believe me. Then the next morning, I checked on everything that might be disturbed in my room. Earlier that day, elderly people that lived next door to me had a yard sale, and I bought a huge Rand McNally dictionary for $1. That's the only thing I could find that was missing from my room, besides the mess I had not made. I don't think I encountered something demonic, and I don't necessarily think I experienced anything that was extraterrestrial, because I didn't see any kind of a flying object or anything. I think I encountered some sort of secretive subculture that had technology that observes or was trying to learn more about us and gathering information. And here's where what happened that the very next night, I waited for this thing. I sat up all night waiting for this thing to come through my window with a baseball bat. I know it sounds crazy. It didn't come that night. The third night, I was getting a drink of Kool-Aid. My mother had a potato plant sitting in the windowsill in the kitchen. I was drinking Kool-Aid, and I seen the hand come up and lift that thing out of the window. It took it. I peeked out and I got scared because of the previous experience. And I've seen this thing, packing this thing into a cardboard box. This thing that picked the cardboard box up looked at me now for the second time that I had seen him. Our garage was detached. This thing took about 4 steps and leaped up on top of the garage and walked off toward the back where I couldn't see it. I couldn't wait until the next morning to get out there and climb on top of the garage to see where it was, to see if there was some sort of fort or a nest or anything. There was no evidence. There was nothing.